Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. Here, this is the spot where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Welcome home, Brains. There's only one requirement to hang out on the edge, is that you open your big brain and close your small mind. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Well, hello there, Dr. Anna Blake. Where's my postcard? Brains, you at home? On the Edge with April Mahoney and Dr. Anna Blake in Canada. Look at that. She got to put it up, girl. Yeah, because we're going to have the picture. We are going to get the picture, all that later, okay? Brains, we're laughing right now, but we're going to talk about a real serious subject. Do you ever consider that your doctor is burnt out? Have you ever walked in there and just, you see him come in with this very, serious face and white coat and, pocket protector and all that? But what's behind that? They're individuals too. They have family, they have drama, they have financial problems, they've got kids, and they got access to drugs. Oh, yes. So we're going to talk about all of that, plus the high rate of suicide of doctors, and also the bullying in the nursing profession, which I think is absolutely appalling because I love a nurse. So we are going to talk to Dr. Anna Blake because that is her specialty. She is a physician, a family physician, but in addition to that, she is now also a coach for female physicians that are really kind of going through it. She's going to share with us a little bit about her experience and the drama that she's experienced and postpartum. But look at her. You'd never know it. She's the mama of two and just as pretty as she can be. So help me welcome her to the edge, Dr. Anna Blake. Hi, baby.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, April.
Welcome on the edge. You should have heard us in the green room. Boy, we were cracking up. We was talking with dirty mouths.
Yes.
But life is good. Life is good. And I want to, even before we get started, I want to thank you from the bottom of my socks because my heart is not deep enough for the sacrifice and the dedication that you give to others to save their lives, to put yourself with this COVID at, arm's length of disease, to go home and deal with your family and wake up and do it again. So I really want to thank you because you could have been a hostess at a restaurant. You didn't have to be a physician, so I thank you for that.
You forgot to tell me to bring my tissues.
Oh, girl, please. Girl, please. All right. So tell my brains a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yes. So, I'm a late 30s.
Oh my God.
Rural family physician. I'm Canadian, so sometimes people hear my supposed Canadian accent, which to me sounds pretty normal, but I drop an A every now and then, so I'll probably give myself away at some point. But I've been doing rural family medicine now for I think I'm going on my 7th year, and along the way, I went through an episode of burnout, and I had my first baby, and all of a sudden, what for me previously was a world where I was kind of getting by, everything kind of came unglued and just all crumbled and fell apart. And so that's how I wound up coming to the world of coaching, because I didn't know how to solve the problem I was in. And I was pretty desperate, which, I can share more about later. But essentially, I came to coaching as somebody who was looking for coaching as a way to help me cope with the situation and make medicine a sustainable option for me, because I was so desperate that I was thinking about leaving. And essentially, through getting help with coaching and enjoying it so much, I decided that I wanted to be part of bringing coaching to the world of medicine. And this is where I am now, doing both life as a doctor and life as a physician coach.
Okay, so what's the difference between coaching and counseling?
Okay, that's an awesome question. So, the way I conceptualize this in really broad terms is counseling built on treating brains that have some kind of disorder. Okay, so there's mental illness involved in some way, and counseling helps us solve the problems of disordered thinking. Coaching is, at least the kind of coaching that I do in particular, there's lots of different types of coaching out there, but I do what's called causal coaching. And so I'm looking to get to the root cause of what's happening for my clients. And it really is looking at the limitations of the normal functioning of the human brain. So we're not looking at pathology here. We're looking at like the normal cognitive traps and things we kind of stumble on and get caught up in. And so it can be an adjunct, and it was certainly an adjunct for me when I was struggling with mental health problems at the same time, but it's not a solo replacement for anything to sort of treat a mental health disorder.
Okay, so with the coaching, you've got you're able to really kind of be a little bit more personal, because a psychiatrist is like, you check in. Yes, brains, I've checked in before. I love it. But I was smarter than the psychologist. Oops. But this is a little bit more hand holding, a little more coddling, a little bit more personal. Your psychiatrist or therapist or whatever, they kind of draw a fine line, when that bell rings. But this is a little bit more day to day, functional, relatable type of deal. Maybe not the prescription when you're dealing with someone in a coaching capacity. Would you agree?
For sure. And I think sometimes that it blurs the lines a little bit with mentorship as well, which again is a bit more of an informal component. But what I really love about coaching for physicians is so many physicians do not feel safe in the mental health systems that exist, because there's a lot of fear about admitting we're struggling and that having implications, right? I mean, the average physician who is struggling, the vast majority of physicians, I'll even say, who are struggling, are not at all incapable of practicing medicine. But there's a huge fear of, if you admit that you're struggling, is someone going to report you to your regulatory body? Are you going to have, some kind of restrictions? Are you going to need to do reporting? Are things going to happen or is your information going to get leaked to somebody who shouldn't have access to your personal health care record? So I think there's this general mistrust in the medical community that it's not safe for us to be both the doctor and the patient when it comes to some of these struggles that we see in burnout physicians.
I find that in the military too.
Yeah.
When they're upper rank, they don't want to identify. But you know what? When you go cuckoo crazy there and you fall all out and start screaming and hollering and have an episode, you're going to wish you had told somebody. See, there's no shame associated with this. This is what we have to get over, the stigma. If they broke their arm, they would come into work in a sling. If they had a cold sore on their lip, they would come with some ointment on it. So this is just a different type of wound that needs to be healed. And if you are in treatment, or if you're working with a coach or whatever, at least it is documented that you're aware of your situation and you're trying to rectify it. Brains. Okay? There's no shame in the game. So now, you decided to work specifically with women. Why?
A couple of things. So one is I have a strong interest in women's health overall as a physician. I used to do obstetrical care, and I think being a mom, I think there was some draw to women physicians. But the other piece of this is what I have uniquely observed to be struggles that particularly pertain to women physicians. So what I think happens uniquely for women that creates a situation where we have higher rates of burnout, we have higher risk of suicide, then male physicians, then women in the general public. I think it all comes down to this high achiever syndrome that women in medicine have. So we're often very perfectionistic. We have very, very, very unattainable standards for ourselves. We have extremely harsh inner critics, and we think we succeeded because of that. Then what happens is we deal with all kinds of gender biases and backlash that's associated with our gender. And we have all of the expectations of society, which is that women are going to be maternal and be at home and raise their babies. And so we wind up with these sort of things pulling us in different directions. And I think there's very much a hidden curriculum in medicine that teaches us that we need to suppress our feelings and we need to squash it down, and we need to be just like at the beginning when you were saying, do you ever think about this when your doctor walks in the room, right? We have to just show up and be professional, and not, there's no room for us to have those human aspects and express these struggles that we have. So I think most of us just kind of squash that down. So as I started to learn tools to deal with this myself, because I was struggling with the same things myself, I realized, like, women need to know it can be so much better than this, that we don't have to be defined by the ways that we've been taught to think, by the culture of medicine, by societal roles, by the backlash you get where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't as a woman in medicine. And so I think that it was just all of that led me down this road. I felt like there was really a demand for it, and I wanted to be part of the solution.
That's a beautiful explanation. Absolutely. I totally get it. Because I had another guest on my show, and her focus is dealing with people with overachiever syndrome. You know, I would just think that they're smart and heady, but that's a different kind of space. Because you're super nerdy, you're super smart, you're isolated, either you're way extroverted or way introverted. There's really no middle ground. And there's really nobody that you can talk to on your level because, again, they think like I think, all of these other things. So that's a beautiful explanation in women. And, suicide rate. I was talking to a veterinarian. I didn't really realize the high suicide rate of veterinarians, too.
Yeah.
I would think that, you've just saved a puppy's life, or you just delivered a colt or a calf, and you'd be the happiest person on earth. Nope. High suicide rate. And access to drugs, and they know what drugs work, and they're self-medicating again to get the edge off because they don't want to openly talk about this. There's a lot of alcoholism. So tell us a little bit about the suicide rate among physicians, and what can we do to, bring awareness to that?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, before I sort of jump into that a little bit, last spring when I started telling my story on a public platform, my backstory is that I burned out. I was dealing with postpartum depression, and in the fall of 2019, what happened for me was I reached such a low point that I felt like there was no way out, and I planned my own death by suicide. And as with most, as you say, most people who have access to highly lethal means, I would have been successful had I gone through with my plan. I very fortunately had a moment where my daughter's face flashed before my eyes, and I thought, I just want to see her one more time. I don't know what's next for me in the afterlife. I don't know what that's going to look like. I could die another day, but I just want to see her one more time before I go. And that's what stayed my hand that night and led me to seek help. And that's really where things started to turn around for me. But part of the reason why I started to tell my story, it was about 6 months later, after doing coaching and really feeling like I was in a place where I was very healed, that I felt like I could start to speak about this. So I did. I started to tell my story. And interestingly, I made contact with another physician and a veterinarian, both of whom were people who I'd known in the past and who were kind of living parallel journeys to me. Like, they were going through the exact same experiences in the previous fall, and they both decided they wanted to speak out too. So we met on Facebook and we did a Facebook Live, and there were like 1,000 people who ended up watching it, who
Mm.
were all professionals who had felt this way at some point in the past, who had struggled, who were just like so grateful to have a place to listen and be validated and receive some hope that things can get better. And it was just this really beautiful coming together. Like I really didn't expect anything like this to happen at all when we decided to just get on the old Facebook and start talking live about our
Thank
experiences,
you,
right?
Mr. Zuckerberg. I love
Right.
him.
Right.
People give him a hard time. I love him. If it wasn't for Facebook, I'm telling you, it'd be awful sauce. And I hear a a trepidation in your voice. I hear you go back to that place of pain.
Mhm.
So it's an ongoing struggle, but it's an ongoing awareness because you are aware of it.
Yeah. And part of it too is just reverence for how lucky I am to be here too. That's really what creates the emotional response for me now. Every time I hear of a female physician who's a mom who has died by suicide, of which there have been many since this pandemic began, every single time I hear that, it's it's really hard for me. Like it brings me back because I realize I could have been there to myself. And I'm abundantly grateful that I was able to receive the help. I think it's not our fault when we're there. It's easy for our families to think for instance, one of my physician colleagues lost her sister who is a physician this year to suicide. And she talks about how she's also a physician coach. And she just talks about how she really wished that she'd known it was this bad for her sister. And the temptation is there to blame ourselves. But the way I look at it is I'm here, I'm doing my part to try to prevent another woman physician from ever dying, but knowing full well that it's not something we're ever going to be able to always prevent, but that the more we speak, the more I show up on platforms like this, the more I tell this story, the more likely it is that somebody is going to reach out for help who never would have considered doing it before.
Well, again, thank you for standing up and telling your truth. So postpartum.
Hmm.
Girl, I have postpartum hell and I ain't had a baby in 33 years.
You just never forget.
I can never forget, and you go back to that place because it will wear you
Yeah.
down. I remember my postpartum story, Brains. I love to tell you a story.
Mhm.
I had the baby, and Mr. Magnificent had come home, and boy, he was on his way home. And I dressed the baby up and I gave her a bath and she was smelling so good. And I put her in her little carrier and I said, you know what? I can get back in these jeans. I'm put on a little sexy top. And you know what? I might do a little something, something when you get here. Girl, she turned around. She pulled them barrettes out her hair. She started screaming. She threw up all over her clothes. I started to lactate. My afro went every which way but loose. I'm telling you, I came up out the ground. I was unglued. I was holding her like this, and when he walked in the door, I said, take her right now. I didn't like that little person right then, and I'm being truthful, I'm being truthful. But there has been some extreme cases where I was reading in the paper not too long ago, a woman put her baby in the oven. There have been, and people understand this. Just because a woman can have a baby doesn't mean all the time that she's qualified as a parent. Okay? There's a lot of responsibility to that. A lot of responsibility. And you get tired, you get frustrated, this demanding, and then you got to play footsie with your man because he wants attention. Is the dinner ready? You're going to do a little something, something. Come over here and cuddle. I want to talk. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to be bothered with you or the kid. I want to go in the room and cry. Is that some of the things that you experienced during postpartum that you just kind of want to sit and cry?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to speak especially to the experience of this as a woman physician as well, because so many women physicians are trying to juggle working at the same time as having babies,
Mhm.
and the same expectations still fall on the women. Give you an example. I love my in-laws. They're wonderful. They're very supportive of us. But recently they were making a comment about how my husband has a lot on his plate looking after our kids
Mm.
because he helps me with the
He is,
kids,
he is
right?
the house husband. Does he
Well, right now he's at home. Right now he's at home. He's on paternity leave. But the interesting thing is this, right? Is let's just think about if I was a man, right? If I was a man and I was working and also looking after my kids, people would be worshiping the ground I walked on, right? They would be like, he's such a great parent, he's a provider, and he's a family man, right? He's amazing. But people don't think about women the same way. And I'm not trying to single them out. Like, I think this is just part of our culture, right? Is we just expect women to do those things. So part of the experience that I think so many women struggle with is if they have careers, especially like if they're professional women, right, is juggling this identity that our society has around us being the mother. So all of those things that you were talking about, April, when you were sharing your experience, right, of being at home with the baby, and sometimes you're just like, oh, I don't even like this little thing,
Yeah,
right? It feels
he's
like
a, look at
you're
this little creature. What
constantly
did I do?
giving.
Oh my God, what did I do?
That's it. I mean, I had this thought running through my mind just last week. I was like, "Meh, I feel like I'm just the provider of milk and money. That's all I do. I make milk and make money."
Just call me an utter, why don't you?
That's it. And I had to do a little coaching work on it, right? Because like it's kind of a bullshit story that I was telling myself, right? And it
Right?
was robbing me of my ability to see myself as like the badass woman that I am. I'm a
Right.
physician, I'm a coach, like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a mom. I'm doing it all with one baby on my hip and a toddler on my leg, right?
Mhm.
And you know, I've learned how to love myself through all of these things, even though things aren't always pretty and put together, even though,
Mhm.
I was
I know.
doing my hair from my like frizzy mom do 10 minutes before I got here, right? Because it's just how you do it when you're a mom. And I think the
My
key thing
my mother was a hoot. I think she loved my husband more than she loved me. Uh, God rest her soul. She was passed 4 months ago. I miss her so.
oh, I'm so
But she
sorry.
used to tell me, she says, that son-in-law of mine, Mr. Magnificent, because that's what I call him, because he is magnificent. She said, honey, he can clean the house, and that boy know how to cook. And I said, bravo. That's what let him do all of that. Okay? Because this is what women don't do. Is you don't understand that there's a word called delegation. Okay?
Yes, amen.
And that can be delegating your job. You don't have to be a perfectionist. That's what you have a staff of nurses for. That's what you have colleagues for. That's when, my doctor told me that she had 1,500 patients. Now, she's not seeing them every day, but 1,500, that number to me was just ridiculous. And she was looking all sad and coming in looking all frumpy. And I told her, girl, you need to go and get your hair done and get your nails done. Take a few days off. I hadn't seen her in a while. Glory be to God, I hadn't been sick. And just talked to her not too long ago, and she done got married. Took my advice. She was just looking like just awful. My mother's doctor, cute as he could be, committed suicide. We were devastated. We went to make an appointment. They said, oh no, you have a new doctor. I said, a new doctor? What are you talking about? He said, oh, he committed suicide. Went online and saw his obituary. So there is a lot going on back there. Nurses are bullying one another. I have some great guests that are teaching nurses resilience. The last thing I want is for my nurse to be gossiping and bullying one another when she's supposed to come in and give me my morphine injection. I need your head in that space. And that is an assumption that we all have is that the doctor is going to be 10 up to snuff. When they go in for surgery, oh no, he hasn't had a few cocktails. You know, what even upsets me is I know people, and I've seen and I actually heard the doctors talk in surgery. I want you to keep your mouth shut and pay attention to that screen and that anesthesiologist. I don't want no talking. They be playing the radio. They be, because it's second nature to them. And there's an expectation that you have of physicians that are unrealistic. They're not politicians, they're not bankers. They just expect for you to be a certain kind of person. And I'm so glad that you are working and coaching other female physicians. And I'm hoping that there's programs like this for male physicians,
Yep.
to be able to talk to it, because men don't talk about it.
Yeah, totally. And that's in my awareness for sure, that this is very much needed for men as well, because these things show up differently for men, right? A lot of times what happens with the male physicians is they're the ones that wind up with aggression issues and different kinds of behavioral. They're the physicians that are making trouble, right? And throwing things and acting violent in the OR and making threats, and it presents completely different in many male physicians. But I think also there are men who are just quietly suffering. I think we don't want to totally be stereotypical here, right? But there are men who are quietly suffering similar to women, and absolutely this work is for them as well. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so interesting because I think you're right. I think you really hit on the nail at the beginning, that I think people forget that physicians are human, and that we actually want our doctor to be human. We want our doctor to ask for help. We want our doctor to do her hair and feel good about herself, because patients benefit from, we don't benefit when doctors commit suicide and then there's nobody left to look after 1,500 patients, right? Like, everybody loses out when that happens. 300 physicians a year in the United States alone die by suicide. It's one whole medical school class every single year.
And you know what? It's double that now with COVID. You fighting the invisible devil.
Yeah.
And then you've got politricians, as I call them, that go against science, never read a medical book, never probably passed science or chemistry, but they're going to tell you, don't get the vaccine. I travel the world. I've taken malaria shots. I've taken, I don't know, whatever they say take, because you're going to a foreign country. I don't know what the hell is in that stuff either. Okay? But I take it. I take a chance. Oh, it's going to do this. Oh, it's going to do that. You're getting your information from the internet. Well, good luck with that, because I'm going to wear my mask. I got my shot, and I'm going to stay 6 feet away from you. I'm not going to argue with you. But there's people like you that put your life on the line every single day to save the ignorant, the disenfranchised, the overlooked, the underserved, or the upper echelon that just don't feel that they're untouchable until your ass can't breathe and you laying there on a ventilator. If you ever see, I saw my brother on a ventilator, and I wanted to pull the cord. It was horrible.
Yep.
It was horrible. And you got all these different variants and strains. Brains, they don't know what is going to happen, because COVID is not going away. It's like the flu. There's still people getting TB. It is here to stay. So how are we going to adjust, edit, and filter? And also give doctors and nurses some relief. And I'm telling, I wouldn't last a minute. All these people coming in now with this Delta variants, and they have not taken the vaccination because of their ignorance, but they want you to save their life. And if you don't save their life, then you haven't done what you're supposed to do. And you've already been there 18 hours. And they got to go home and deal with the kids, and already got this conversation going around in your brain. Okay? Don't get me to preaching, because I get real mad at y'all. Go in and do what you're supposed to do. You don't know what's going to happen. Everybody's not going to be 100%. Would you agree? With anything.
Yeah. And I think, if you want my 2 cents on what I teach people when it comes to the COVID vaccine, since we're on the topic, right? It's this. It's what people don't consider when they're sitting around and they're afraid of potentially there being a side effect of some component of a vaccine, right? When we have lots of data that suggests that this is safe in large numbers of people. What they're not considering is what we know about COVID, which is that COVID kills people. It makes people incredibly ill. Yes, lots of people will get it and not become really sick, but it makes very large numbers of people very sick compared to any other disease that we've seen in, modern medicine. And you have to consider what we know about the risk, even just long haul COVID, right? Which are the like prolonged symptoms that people get after having COVID. That alone is enough to me to say I'm willing to consider
Right.
any kind of potential small risk, very remote risk of side effects from something, right? And so it's when you're not taking that information into consideration, I'm a proponent of the COVID vaccine for everybody. I'm a proponent of it for women who are pregnant. I'm a proponent of it for women who are breastfeeding. I had 1 dose while I was pregnant. I had my 2nd dose while I've been breastfeeding. And to me, I'm like, let's do anything we can to potentially give my baby some protection from this as well,
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have a extra layer of challenge because you are a rural doctor, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have the full-on suite of services and all the bells and whistles all the other doctors. Do you have a little black bag though?
It's brown, but yes.
It's brown. And so you go in and, do you deliver babies? And I mean, just tell me, just what is like a typical day or, work day for a doctor in a rural community in Canada?
Yeah. So some of that has changed for me now, but the way it looked for me when I started my practice for the first 5 years was I saw patients in my clinic. I would go and make house calls to people's homes, especially if patients were, elderly with poor mobility or people who were dying of something. I would look after them at home. I delivered babies for the patients in my practice. And I would look after my own patients when they were admitted to hospital. So usually it would look like some running around from place to place to place to place. And I carried a pager 24/7 and worked every day all the time to do those things because I didn't really have a call group to support me. If I was going away, if I was leaving, then I could sign out. But most of the time, I never took a day off because I believed that I had to be doing those things. Like I believe that I wasn't fulfilling some role that I was supposed to fulfill if I took a day off. I created so much guilt for myself every time I thought about taking time off to be with my family, or, heaven forbid, I want to have a glass of wine with dinner, right? You can't do any of those things when you're carrying a pager and your doctor who could get called in at any point in time. And so it really took a toll on my life and my well-being. And part of my journey when I was going through my recovery with burnout and being coached myself was realizing that I didn't want to live a life where I carried a pager 24/7. And so in the end, I made the decision to step away from some of my extended skills. And so now I have just a, nice full spectrum family practice, and I look after some patients at home and I do some palliative care, but I don't do the obstetrics piece and I don't look after my patients in the hospital anymore because it was not a life that I could live and also be healthy. It wasn't a life that I could live where I was going to be a physician and available to those 1,500 patients and also be able to be the best version of me that I can be, also be well and be healthy. And there are so many physicians out there who are doing this, who are doing the job at the expense of themselves and their health. And they don't know that it's an option to do it another way. And that if we all were to stop doing medicine at our own expense, what would happen would be that people would have to listen, right? People would have to make the systemic changes that need to happen. But it's hard because many people don't believe they can actually do that. They can put those boundaries in place and make those changes in their life.
Well, and it's like an athlete. I look at athletes that are on top. Leave while you're on top. Leave while you can still enjoy your life. My husband's got a couple more years. He's already retired from the military. He's going to be retired from his second career. And I taught him a bad habit. I taught him how to call in sick. Because he didn't know. He didn't know. And I said, do you have a short timer's attitude? And he goes, no. He says, but I just want to, I want to have 10, 15, 20 years of just not having to be responsible or accountable for anything or anybody but me. I get up when I want to, go where I want to, piddle around if I want to. So go out while you're on top. There are these physicians and doctors, become mentors for the youth. Support groups, be counselors, use your experience in other types of ways. You don't have to still be in the OR at 72 years old. Women physicians, mentor, seek out other women to support, create support groups, have conversations, go out to lunch, be friends, not enemies. It is so important to build a community of people that understand what you're doing and how you're doing. Because when you're in that coffin, they're going to say, oh my God, she was such a wonderful physician. But how about she was a wonderful mother? Or did you see those orchids she grew? Or did you ever go to her house and eat her banana pudding? Are they going to say those things about you? I hope so. And if not, you better get coaching.
Right. It's so great that you say that, because that is something we talk about a lot, right? It's like, what eulogy traits? It's like, what do you want? Do you think that you want to have in your eulogy that, like, that Dr. Blake, she was the last person to leave the office every single night for the rest of her career, right? No, right? You look at the family members left behind that are like, we didn't even know this person because that's all they did. And it's so important just to know that, what happens for women in medicine is this, right? We hear the stories and the stories and the stories, and we pass down the stories to the trainees and to the the younger physicians that we mentor of how life in medicine as a woman is. And what happens is it just continues to be the truth of, this is the way it has to be, that it has to be hard to be a mom and a physician. It has to be, you fighting against the establishment. And what happens is that we internalize that messaging, right? And so automatically our brains are wired to look for suffering in the world, right? To look for how it's hard. And I think what happens is that some women start to do it differently, and they start to believe that it's possible for things to be different. But sometimes the rest of the women are like, there's something about her, like, she's a bitch, she's a queen bee, right? And they start to single her out, and they start to isolate her. And I think we need to start asking the questions of, like, what is she doing? Like, where is she putting boundaries in place? What are the lessons that we can learn here from seeing that? Or we think we're not like her. I just coached a woman physician yesterday on this. There was a colleague, and she couldn't figure out why she would see this colleague and she would feel bad about herself. She would feel inadequate because she was telling me this story about how she has all these thoughts about how the colleague's able to see 50 people a day. And it's because she's short and she's brisk and she's, too quick and she misses things. And, and she was passing judgment on this colleague. But I said to her, and she said, oh, she makes so much more money than me because she does things this way. I said, well, what's wrong with wanting to make more money and wanting to be efficient? And she was like, nothing. I said, see, the thing is you actually really want some of the things she has, but you think you have to compromise your values and your care for your patients. And I just want to send the message that you don't have to compromise those things. But one of the things that we have to realize as women in medicine is that we've been conditioned to believe that we have to give people excessive amounts of time, excessive amounts. We have to talk to people and explain things excessively so that people see us as being authorities, right? And so some of this is we need to up level our concept of ourself into believing that we're the authority, and we don't have to justify that to people because we convey that message in the way we teach other people how to treat us by the way we treat ourselves. So I think it's so important.
I'm a master teacher. I tell people all the time, I teach folks how to treat me. And you better. And that even goes for your patients. Train your patients to come in. I'm going to see a new doctor tomorrow. I got a laundry list. I done prescriptions. As things occur, I've written down things. You have to be your own advocate, brains. They're not going to make you take your diabetes medicine. They're not going to make you go in and get your breast exam. They're going to advise you and tell you what to do. And then if you don't do it, then, all hell breaks loose. And now it's Dr. Blake's fault, because she didn't do what she was supposed to do. You've got to take care of yourself. You have to be your own first line of protection. Dr. Blake, I could talk to you for hours. I really could. And I just get goose pimples. Number one, I'm so proud of you that you reached out and you got what you needed. And it's ongoing. Get a babysitter, girl, and go on a date night. They're going to be fine. Everybody's not a monster. Since I say this with love, since those in-laws have so much to say, maybe they can say it to the kids while you and your husband go out on a date. I just do it out there, but it's about love and it's about respect and honoring what you do. And I'm, kudos to your husband too, because it's not easy being a house husband. Whatever he does, and, being there to support you and encourage you and go through your cuckoo crazy, because I'm sure that you let loose on him one or two times. That's just the nature of the beast. But it's not because we don't love you. It's because we're trying to find an outlet. Okay? We're trying to find an outlet. And an outlet is also a place to plug in some good stuff with this one right here. Dr. Blake, please tell my brains how to get in contact with you. If they are looking for coaching, counseling, maybe here in the U.S., they want to have a template to start their own support group. I would love to just help you spread this message because, again, I love physicians.
So my business is called the Anti-Fragile Female MD. And I want to just say a quick word about that because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know this word anti-fragile and what it means. So it was created by a philosopher, Nassim Taleb, and essentially the idea of it is systems, which is what he was writing on, systems that are anti-fragile get better because of challenges and volatility and difficulties that they face. Okay. Like the stock market would be one example. I adopted this to physicians because I think we can take these difficult experiences. I'm a better version of myself because I had these challenges. I'm better able to relate to human beings. I have a whole second career. I'm an entrepreneur because I had these experiences, right? And so to me, that's what the concept of the anti-fragile female physician really is. Now, I called it MD, but I fully respect and coach the DOs out there too. So it's, I just wasn't aware that DOs existed at the time because I'm in Canada and we're pretty much all MD.
Okay, so tell us the difference. What's the difference between a MD and a DO?
You know what? I'm not the qualified person to talk on that at all. They're both physicians. That's all I can
Oh, okay. All right.
But sometimes people get
that. In case I go tomorrow and I see she's got a DO behind her name, I know that she's still qualified.
Physician through and through. Amazing physicians. I coach some of them as well. They're lovely. So yes, so I can be found on Facebook. My Facebook page is the Anti-Fragile Female MD. I'm also on Instagram at the Anti-Fragile Female MD. My website is www.antifragile, FMD for femalemd.com. And I love connecting with people on this topic. It's something I'm hugely passionate about. And And I'm also happy. I do speak to lots of physicians who are interested in getting into coaching, into mentorship, bringing this into institutions. I think this needs to be dripped into the level of medical education so that we can actually change the system from the ground up. And so that is a mission that I'm on, though it's a little bit of a hiatus at this point in time while I'm raising babies, but I'm coming for
That's
the
okay.
world to
But
address that as well.
each one must teach one.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be, everybody's into the numbers game. I'm not into the numbers game, baby. I'm into quality. I'm not into quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get 2 or 3 allies, 4 or 5 places around the world, and you've done turned it upside down, inside out. And I'm gonna help you do that because I'm gonna run this like a machine. Okay? I'm gonna run like I ran to the door with that baby.
And that's, I think it's just important to really to remember the ripple effect of what we do, right? Because we just never know. Like, just like when we jumped on Facebook and had that talk and connected with 1,000 people, like, you don't know the ripple effect and what those people are later going to do and what their story is going to be, right? And what somebody who listens, who we never even ever necessarily make contact to, hears something like this, right? And believes that there's another way, right? And maybe reaches out to somebody they know who's a coach. Like, it's all connected. And so I think you're so right that we don't want to minimize the impact we can make in somebody else's life.
And that's what we do right here on The Edge Brains, a place where the conversation is pointed in your face. The conversations are real, okay? People are real. We're all human beings. And we're going to put all of her contact information on the back end of that. I want you to reach out to her if you're a physician. Maybe your physician is coming in a little like mine with her hair all over the place and say, you know what? Let me turn you onto this website. It's okay because they want to be your friend in a friendly kind of way. All right. So again, thank you so much. I adore you. And next time I want to see the kids. So I can get a look at them. Give your husband and your in-laws a big hug for me. Tell them thank you for the support, your encouragement, and being out there in rural Canada. Come to San Diego and I'll take you on a trip on a yacht and
Yes,
yeah,
I'm in.
yeah, and we'll relax. Okay. So thank you again, Brains. I need you to do what? Subscribe, like, love, share all over the planet. Okay. Because this is the place for you. Because we love you. We care about you. And we want you well. Bye, Brains.